on Scythe has been getting some really good attention recently, which is really appreciated from all of you guys. So we decided we wanted to put our heads together and do a bit more research and really put our thinking caps on here to kind of make a bit more sense of the character and explore him a bit further. So we've basically been looking at, I guess, fan theories online, the established lore and what we do know within the games. And I think the evidence here does suggest that Scythe is actually William Black, which is also known as the Archon, or the first Archon. I think this is hugely strongly backed up by evidence, and I tend to believe on this one the most. But I think it's also clear that Scythe is death in the game. I mean, the imagery there is just too damn strong to ignore. The sickle, or the scythe, that he actually carries is pretty much identical to Grim Reaper, and he's also pretty much shown to be ancient and old and most likely undead. So let's just get straight into the first theory that we come across then.
Yep, so Lenup on the Fable Heroes subreddit said, and I'll quote the whole thing here, so if you'll settle for my 2 cents, we're assuming Scythe is William Black. That is never confirmed ever. He prefers this story instead. Scythe is a necromancer, as said in Fable 2, whose only goal is staying alive for whatever reasons. Maybe he was one of the heroes in the age of the Archon William Black, the first battles against the court, Jack's defeat, the first time around. He saw the rise and fall of the Old Kingdom, the treacherous end of Nostro, etc. So he saw all of these things. And maybe he even spent a lifetime or two trying to better the world, but frustrated with the guild and or the heroes predating the guild, and with the realization that history will eventually repeat itself regardless of what he does, he found his time is better spent in Snowspire. What's he doing there? Protecting the Oracle, keeping a watchful eye on the lair where Jack's true and terrible form resides. Who knows, there's many possible sort of reasons for him to be there. So with that in mind, Scythe may not be nearly as powerful as William Black or Jack. In fact, it's never said that he's powerful in any way. He's just really good at staying alive, curious about what the transaction of souls or other spiritual currency took place so that he cannot die. That would be some good lore. Also curious about why his soul wouldn't be just as good as Nostro's or the Guildmaster's for that one quest. Perhaps he doesn't have a soul anymore. So he's also an isolationist, a silent witness to the beginning and the end of each old and new age. He predates the Oracle, which puts him at the Third Age or earlier, which means he saw the end of the Old Kingdom for sure. Certainly he wouldn't be bothered by another end of the world. It's none of his business if Jack destroys the world. A new age will rise out of it and he will remain regardless. It's only when him and his own were threatened that he contacted the guild. When the hero is an apprentice in training at the guild, Scythe is seen arguing with Maze about the troubles that are stirring in the Northern Wastes, ignoring Maze's attempts to enlist Scythe's help for the problems that are seemingly commonplace at that moment. Scythe isn't terribly bothered by the deaths of Thunder, Briar, and the Guildmaster because he doesn't really care. The world will end up in someone's hands, and as long as it isn't in the hands of someone intent on bringing down Snowspire and the Oracle, he couldn't possibly care less who that person is. And with these assumptions, there's no reason for Jack to care about Scythe, one way or another. Jack was never directly threatened by Scythe, as he was with the Guildmaster and others. But surely this is preposterous to you folks. William Black is Scythe, and Jack was either too busy or too stupid to see it right under his nose. That makes much more sense, yeah. So this is a quote from Reddit, so obviously this isn't 100% our opinion, but this is somebody's theory. And I think, again, there's a lot of things to back this up as well.
Yep.
So
there's another one here from Zarks on the same subreddit. It says, Maze states the ultimate quest of the hero is to escape death. Scythe is the only hero to do so besides Jack. Scythe in many ways represents death himself in Fable 2. When you wish your sister back to life, she says she is with Scythe. Jack is the only person powerful enough to defeat Scythe or death. Many heroes defeated Jack, but can't defeat Scythe. Scythe is the father of all heroes. You defeat Jack in dragon form in a room called Archon's Folly. The truth about Fable is getting a hero with Scythe's blood. Only he could acquire the Sword of Aeons and wear Jack's mask. This is the only way to defeat death, who would be waiting for you outside Archon's Folly, no matter what choices you made in your life. If you did not have the sword, the hero's blood, or the mask, you could not defeat death. You must have all to be powerful enough.
Yep, so I guess this one is sort of closer, I guess, to what we sort of talked about in our original video on Scythe as well. We sort of feel like there's a lot of evidence to back up Scythe being both Death and or the first Archon. So I definitely I like this one a little bit more. So the next one here is TLC-for the win, FTW on Fable Heroes forum as well. If you ask the Oracle about William Black, they mention that William's shadow has not yet left Albion, or something like that. Plus, in the history of the Old Kingdom, William encases himself in gold armor with blue robes, and when Scythe appears, it is in tattered pieces of gold armor and blue robes. When you attack him, he tells you that you are far too weak to kill him. He also knows everything about Jack and the court, being able to warn you not to wear the mask, and other things as well. He is immortal, trained Nostro in the ways of the will that Black invented, and there are other things on top of that too that sort of point towards this evidence as well. And I don't think Scythe not being William Black is possible anymore. So
really, what does this mean? I think all three theories can be kind of equally weighted with sort of options and the kind of potential evidence. For me, I think there's a chance that Scythe could actually be both Death and William Black. That's my personal take. And also, more importantly, I think this would suggest that he's the start, or at least the earliest record of the main hero's bloodline, which is obviously very important to the story of all the Fables. So, in a sense, you could say that Scythe is the beginning of that bloodline. He is William Black, which means he's the first Archon, and it also means that maybe he has now become Death. So my theory, and we'll get onto that later on, is that he wasn't originally Death, that he had become Death. So if we kind of go through a little bit more, there is this thing. So if he's William Black, then obviously he's the one who did defeat Jack of Blades and the court using the Sword of Aeons, which was Jack's own sword. It would make him the first Archon, whose battle armor is also still found and worn by the hero in the game, and it's probably the best armor in TLC as well. Let's be honest, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, don't you have to give up all of your silver keys to get access to it, or is that the other?
That's the other
25,
one in the same area.
Just 25.
25 in a chest. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's in the necro. I can never remember the name.
The necropolis or whatever.
That's right. Thank you. The necropolis, as is the demon door that needs the keys.
Requires all your keys. Yeah. That's right.
I guess to kind of further this, let's maybe look more into William Black's story now. So obviously in our previous video we talked about Scythe and Scythe alone, kind of. Now let's talk about William Black and then work out, where some of the parallels might be. William Black was the first and arguably the strongest hero to ever live. He was best known for discovering the power of will, defeating the court and becoming the first and greatest Archon of the Old Kingdom. He was a master of strength, skill, and will, and is the ancestor of Scarlet Road, Teresa, the Hero of Oakvale, the Hero of Southcliff, the Hero of Boulstone, Rose, the Hero of Brightwall, and Logan.
In the days when Albion suffered under the court's cruelty, a humble blacksmith and his wife had a boy. They named him William Black, and he would become the key to save Albion. Little is known about William's youth. As a grown man, he amazed others with the powers of his mind, by which he was able to protect his village and perform feats no other could equal. These acts came to be celebrated as the powers of will. William grew obsessed with the court, determined to find a way to overthrow it. One night, while consulting a mysterious tome, he was suddenly transported from Albion into the void. There he met Jack of Blades, who sat on a throne surrounded by ghastly figures. Jack attempted to enslave William with the power of an ornate sword, but William fought back and managed to steal the sword before escaping the Netherworld.
So back in Albion, the sword then spoke to William. It called himself the Sword of Aeons, and it promised to help him defeat the court, but only if William offered his soul in bondage. With the Sword of Aeons in hand, William set off to end the court's rule for good. William scaled the peak of Ruin, Albion's highest mountain, and challenged the court to combat. The Knight of Blades appeared first, and wielding the Sword of Aeons, William destroyed him completely. Next, the Jack of Blades appeared. They fiercely stuck at one another until William had destroyed Jack's physical body. However, unknown to most, Jack was not truly slain, and therefore his soul escaped to the void and took refuge in his mask. Then the Queen of Blades was the last to face William. For weeks their battle raged across Albion. Mountains were raised and valleys were formed by their mighty blows. At last, William slew the Queen and freed the people from their torment. They acclaimed William, who now took the title Archon as their new king. With
the court gone, the Archon set his mind to unifying Albion into a great kingdom. His powers of will were so great that it seemed the world reshaped itself in accordance with his wishes. Cities were built in mere weeks, and extravagant machines were constructed that ran on will alone. Through 1,000 years of peace, Albion reigned as the greatest centre of commerce and philosophy the world had ever known. The Archon bore many descendants during this age of fortune, all of whom shared his powerful will abilities through his bloodline. These descendants were also deemed Archons. But without an enemy to vanquish, the Archons grew petty and cruel. They called themselves heroes and used their powers of will to terrorize their subjects. The first Archon might have stopped them, but his battle with the Queen and his time in the Void had infected his body and mind with a wasting illness. To combat this illness, he returned to the Void and forcefully cast it from his body, fearing that it would one day control him and use him to rule Albion and twist it to the dark wishes of the Void. William was partially successful in expelling that which plagued him, but it soon took for in the Void, spawning the being known as the Corruptor, and with it the corruption. With remnants of the disease still decomposing his body, William adorned golden armor and a large royal blue cloak before disappearing without a trace. It was at this moment that the corruption of the kingdom truly began. So I think that's the corruption that leads into Fable 3, isn't it?
Yeah. With every new Archon, the tyranny grew. Walls were built to keep citizens in and undesirables out. A forced census system was initiated so that when an alarm sounded, every inhabitant of a town or village must congregate at the centre of town for a head count. An Archon ordered the construction of an oracle in the town of Snowspire. When the oracle was first used, it predicted the fall of the kingdom in years to come. The final Archon ordered a tower to be built. The purpose of this tower was to act as a conduit for all the will in the world, to focus it, channel it, and grant its user a single limitless wish. This tower would be known as the Tattered Spire. When the Archon's wish was told, a great darkness enveloped the sky, and the entire kingdom was razed in an instant. This was the end of the Old Kingdom, and the end of William's empire.
It is stated in the Tales of Albion that Scythe trained Nostro, the founder of the Heroes Guild. Scythe was said to have appeared in a worn, tarnished gold armor and a tattered blue cloak in a similar fashion as what William Black wore when he vanished. The book greatly implies that Scythe may be William Black. In Fable 3, the Scythe tattoo set can be obtained through gifts. And in Fable Anniversary Scythe Content Pack, Scythe charity boots have flavor text referring to him as an Archon, further hinting/confirming that William Black is actually Scythe.
So after the hero of Bowerstone made his or her wish in the spire, this of course being in Fable 2, he or she receives a letter sent from his or her sister Rose, assuming the hero chose the love ending. In this letter, she states that she is safe and in the company of a stranger who is scary but nice. The stranger also dons a hood and appears as a king. It has been confirmed that this stranger is Scythe, which was suspected anyway since he knows of Rose and her brother/sister and has not made an appearance since the defeat of Jack of Blades in the Lost Chapters of Fable.
Yep, so that means that there could be two instances where William, aka the Archon, aka Scythe, could have done a deal with Death and become Death. Either the deal with the Sword of Aeons, or his wish in the Tattered Spire. Either way, it does seem as though these are all the same entity. Could it be that through becoming Death, William Black essentially died anyways? Could it even be said that the reason why Scythe gives the hero a warning to throw away Jack's mask all the way back in Archon's Folly is because he knew firsthand the dangers of listening to Jack's things? So, yeah.
Well, we do know, of course, that when you're required to take the oldest soul, there's not even a hint of a mention of taking Scythe's soul, and that's obviously because it's gone. It's already with the Sword of Aeons, isn't it? At the very least. So, actually, this could even, as I said, all of these things are interconnected. All of the videos I think we've made on Fable are interconnected. The Sword of Aeons is its own entity. So, is it possible that the Sword of Aeons itself might be the incarnate of Death? And when William Black gave his soul to the Sword of Aeons, he actually then became essentially the Grim Reaper in Fable. I think this is possible, right? You can't take Scythe's soul because he doesn't have it to give.
Yeah, and it's not even like I feel like it's not even possible for your character to physically take his soul, even if he had one, because if you try anything with him, he just kind of mocks you. He's way stronger than the hero at this point. I don't think that ever that power gap ever gets reached in any of the Fable games. Really, I think he's always sort of a figure that's beyond what the main character gets to sort of reach.
Yeah, so there's this touching back on Zark's subreddit theory on the Fable Heroes subreddit, where he basically says the only way to defeat death is to basically have the sword and have Jack's mask, and obviously having the hero's blood itself. So it's actually kind of and you know, apologies for making the kind of reference, but it actually reminds me a little bit of like the Deathly Hallows in Harry Potter, where it's like you are part of the same bloodline that got going all the way back, and there's these three things, and the three things coming together mean that you can cheat death, or you can defeat death. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if that is something that's here. So Scythe can only be basically defeated if you've got all three, and at that point it was impossible to have all three, because basically Jack is still there to be defeated in Archon's Folly before you get the soul. The soul is what you need to open up to get in there, right? So it kind of makes sense. There's another question mark, by the way, going back to it, which is if Scythe was so powerful and has defeated death, and obviously in theory can't be beaten by ordinary things, why doesn't he offer more frontline assistance to the hero in the battle against Jack? I mean, he doesn't seem to care early on, and he only seems to care once, you know, things start happening in the Northern Wastes. But even then, he doesn't actually go into combat and battle, does he? Even when Jack becomes a dragon in Archon's Folly, you'd think that maybe Scythe would get involved then. But I guess you could explain this, that he could be almost like a ghostly form now. So maybe more ethereal, so if attacks cannot actually harm him, maybe his attacks now don't harm others either. You know, maybe he's lost his soul so much that he's basically not even really a true physical form, you know, he's kind of slipping into the ether.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the reason why he disappeared in the first place was because the void was sort of starting to corrupt him and making him sick, so perhaps, you know, as a way to sort of remove that from his body, and maybe even if his wish was to become death so that he couldn't die to this sickness that was coming about because of the void, perhaps that also left him in this weakened state where, you know, he's death, so he can, you know, he can harvest like the souls and sort of you know, guide them to wherever they're supposed to go if he is like a Grim Reaper figure. But, you know, in terms of his impact on the living world, perhaps he has lost that. That's like the trade-off. So he used to be like the most powerful person in the living world, and now he's just the most powerful person in the sort of like of the dead, basically. So maybe he, you know, he's kind of unharmable, as you said, by people in the living world, but he's also unable to harm them before it's their time, perhaps, as well. Who really knows at this point?
Yeah, and I think a good theory here for me my theory is that the first Archon and the last Archon are actually one and the same, and that what actually happened is that whilst he was off in the void dealing with his stuff, he maybe came back to the world and then commissioned the Tattered Spire to be able to then have this wish where he could basically wish to be free of the corruption, and that perhaps, you know, the corruption was so set in and so strong that it was this wish that kind of resulted in him becoming essentially the Grim Reaper or death, in order to try and to lose the corruption. So basically it was one evil or the other that he had to go with by this point. I think it's reasonable to suggest that this could be the case, given how, I guess, well versed he is in the will. I'd imagine that he'd be the only one that would be able to actually construct a spire that was capable of, you know, focusing the will that much. What do you think?
Yeah, and he's also one of the only characters who's had like a fight so like on such a high level that it was actually creating, like, it was leveling mountains and creating new valleys and stuff. Like, that's completely on another level. So I would suspect that, I don't think there's any other character that I can think of that has powers even close to the level you'd expect to be able to do that, let alone create a tower that can sort of like harness all will energy and sort of turn it into a singular wish. So I'm not convinced that any other character would be capable of building something like that.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I think also it would be a nice like bookend that kind of William Black, you know, essentially bookends both ends of the Old Kingdom. Like, he's the first Archon starting the Old Kingdom in the year of Archons, and then kind of brings it to a close as well. You know, this corruption is potentially and we'll do another video on the corruption as well, but maybe it's a reference to more than just a physical thing. Maybe the corruption is obviously what happens when you have power. Whenever anyone has power, they start to get corrupted. So maybe his wish was to try and bring an end to this. I guess just to sum up, I guess the real frustration here is that there's just a lack of appearances or references in any of the other games or other works. And I think you and I both agree here that a new Fable game, a great one to do would be like a prequel going back to the days of the Archon, and maybe even like a story of the battle for Albion between William Black and the court. And perhaps this could either confirm or deny some of our theories. But I guess until then, the best theory I have is that William Black was the first Archon, and he was, he prized Albion out of the hands of the court and then sold his soul to the Sword of Aeons, and then basically became, the last Archon as well, constructing the Tattered Spire, and as I said, fixing kind of some of the wicked ways. And this wish also then turns him into the Grim Reaper and Scythe, and so basically all theories are actually one and the same.
Yeah, I think it all sort of points to the same thing. I think there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence at the moment that if nothing else, if we can't confirm anything else for sure, I think the closest thing to confirmation we have is that, William Black and Archon are the same. Sorry, William Black, the first Archon, is the same person as Scythe. And I think, anything else is sort of, I guess, headcanon-y, but I think it still all sort of points towards the same idea that he definitely either sold his soul or, did some kind of ritual or necromantic thing to become Scythe rather than William Black, because obviously he went missing for a very long time, and then he came back as this, as Scythe rather than as William Black. And now has sort of his own separate goal to that of the kingdom, because obviously he's sort of given up and become a different figure here. And I think, if the spire was built by him, if he was the last Archon as well, I think that would make a lot of sense. But I'm sure there's a lot of room for other theories still. And I guess we're not going to know for sure one way or another until, I guess, more evidence either comes to light or in a new game or something like that. So hopefully these theories have helped.
There's been a lot of talk that a new game may well have been commissioned by a team, and I can't remember now off the top of my head what the studio is called, but a studio that is mostly made up of the original developers for Fable from Lionhead, just with minus, at the moment at least anyway, minus Peter Molyneux.
I think
some people think will be good or bad depending on your viewpoint of him.
I can't remember what the team's called, but it's one of the ones that does one of the racing games, isn't it? I'm not sure if it's Forza or one of the other ones, but I think
Forza, that's right.
Yeah, so I think they're
it's a Microsoft, it's under Microsoft, basically.
And it has a lot of the same team members and a lot of the same sort of access to the things that Microsoft would have had at the time too. So hopefully that's
right. So we can only hope. We can only hope. But for the meantime, as I said, my theory is that William Black is the Archon, is Death, is Scythe. I think they're all one and the same.
Yeah, I agree, and I think with that we'll have to leave it there. Again, thanks a lot for the support on the first Scythe video. I think if you guys have any more theories or things that you want to mention in the comments on this one, let us know. I think this is definitely one of our favorite characters, and we'd love to update these theories sort of as new information comes out. But awesome. With that, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See you in the next Fable lore video.